Oh, that's not right. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. How the devil are we doing on this fine and fabulous Friday? I learned last night, this is how much I pay attention to what lies ahead. It's a bank holiday on Monday. I won't be here. I'm going to take a bit of time out with the family before I head off to Italy for 3 days. So, this is the last show until this time next week, basically. I can only apologise, and I apologise deeply for my lack of preparation, but I follow Google Calendar, and Google Calendar, at least my version of it, doesn't list bank holidays. So I was gaily going along. I promised yesterday, I'll see you on Monday. Bloody won't. All of that aside, I think we start today in somber mood. Probably the most tragic celebrity death of recent years, recent memory, certainly since Elvis or Prince, maybe. Ted, the true star of Gone Fishing, sadly has passed away, no longer with us, no longer fetching his briefcase, no longer roaming the riverbank. Sad day. Sad. The nation is in mourning. I think that's the way we're going to put it. Very sad. It really is. I mean, I'm a dog lover anyway, but for a dog that basically put in a cameo appearance on one episode and then became the undisputed star of the show, he will be sadly missed. Apparently, they have filmed another series of Gone Fishing, and Ted will appear in one of them. Apparently, he did pass away mid-filming. It's a very, very sad day. But good old Ted. I'm sure he's gone somewhere far, far better. Although I can't imagine too many places being far, far better than a riverbank. Anyway, got a bunch of stuff to get through today. Had a bit of an issue yesterday. I've not seen him in the chat today, but Stefan Edwards over at Brown & Mason in the Netherlands very kindly sent me a link to a video showing how the Dutch are electrifying their demolition process. My apologies. And I've tried everything I possibly can to download it to bring it to you because it's a cracking little film. Won't work. I don't know whether they've put some kind of block or lock or something like that on it. I literally can't get it down the pipes. So what I'll probably do, I'll keep trying. If that fails, when I come back this time next week, I will try again, and maybe I'll just have to play it directly from YouTube because it's not letting me do what I normally do. Let me go through the good mornings. Good morning, Gary Muirhead, all the way from Tenerife. He says, R.I.P. Wee Ted, the star of Gone Fishing. Rest in peace, little one. My thoughts entirely. Yeah, absolutely. Andy Thornton is here. Wow, got here on time. Unbelievable. Yes. Well, no, nobody is more shocked than I am, Andy, but good morning to you. Thank you for being here. Mark Whiting is in the house. There's Andy saying good morning all. Good morning, Mark and guys. How are we doing? Well, I don't know about you. Now I know that it's a bank holiday Monday. Feeling a little demob happy. Still got quite a bit to do ahead of the trip to Verona. Well, like find the cameras and stuff, but apart from that, we're doing okay. Jim Turner is here as well. Morning, Jim. Thank you for joining us. Stefan Edwards is here. Stefan, you may have missed me saying this. Thank you for sending me that video link yesterday. I tried desperately to get it down from YouTube so that I could play it on the show today. It will not let me. I've tried about 15 different YouTube downloaders, none of which are having it. I think they must have put some kind of lock or a block on it. I'll try something else when I get back, but it is a very good film. Thank you very much indeed for sending it over. Jim says, had a great life out on the water's edge, being spoiled rotten. Yes, absolutely. Mark, I'll touch base with the company. Maybe they can forward the clip in downloadable format. Stefan, that would be absolutely fantastic because I would like to feature it. It is very insightful. I think it's well worth sharing. And Mick Norton is here all the way, probably from Wakefield, hopefully from sunny Wakefield. I don't know. I'm stuck here in leafy Surrey. Sunny here enough, but I don't know what it's doing in Wakefield. But good morning, everyone, one and all. And I'm just going to say a quick good morning to the living legend that is Tristan Mays, who's just joined us over on Instagram as Top Crane Official. Yes, I've been having a bit of a chat with our friend Tristan, maybe doing a bit of filming for him while I'm over in Italy next week. Although, between us, I offered my services, not in a paid way. I just thought I'm going to be there. There's going to be cranes there. Would you like me to film some and send you the footage? And he came back and he specifically asked if Fred was going to be shooting it or whether I was. Apparently, my stuff ain't good enough. What a bloody ingrate. But he's just said, good morning, Mark from Denmark. Hope you are well, you absolute legend. Well, apart from the slight that you leveled at me this morning, I'm doing fine. Thank you for being here. And Dan Cullen saying, top of the morning. Another day in paradise, living the dream. Off today, so long weekend, fantastic stuff. Well, Tristan also reckons I'm a closet crane geek. I can assure you there are many things in my closet. That ain't one of them. Yes, Dan, just to let you know, your various prizes went in the post yesterday. They should be with you probably today. If not, they will be with you tomorrow. Morning muckers, don't let your drop balls go rusty. That's a piece of advice to live by from Chris Ford. Morning, Chris. Thank you for being here. Right, let's crack on, shall we? Because we've got, well, we're going to start with a Caterpillar ad, but I'm going to then play you something from Norway. Now, I'll warn you in advance, it does have a tiny little bit of Norwegian people speaking in Norwegian. But I think when you see the film, you'll forgive it because it is an epic, honestly. Let's have a bit of cat. Now, two things. I need to share you this comment from Tristan Mays. You are definitely you are so far in the crane closet, you were seen in Narnia. Thank you for that. I've completely screwed up the intro to this show. I should have gone to the intro and told you what's going to be in the show. So, belatedly, here we go. It is Friday, the 1st of March. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition, the Lord High Chancellor of live streaming, the authentic voice of the global demolition industry. In today's show, I'm about to start with this, a Norwegian epic from Kobelco, how Caterpillar is spearheading the data center revolution, why an engcon early adopter keeps coming back for more, and a day in the life at Komatsu. Plus, in today's edition of Mark's Morning Monologue, and this was inspired a bit by the chat yesterday, why every day should be a school day. That's what we're doing. And Dan's just said, pinch punch first of the month. Yes, it is. What was that? Pinch punch first of the month, no returns. Do you remember that? No. Did anyone else do no returns? Or is that just me? I'll be so upset if it was just me. Did I say it was March? Good Lord. It's Friday, the 1st of May. Welcome to the breakfast. I'm not going to do it again, but thank you, Jim, for pointing that out. Thankfully, that may not survive the edit. Right, listen, we're going off to Norway. As I say, bit of Norwegian speaking in it. Just watch the images and listen to the music because this is an absolute epic.
Jeg heter Lars Einarsen og jobber for Larvik Granite og har ansvar for drift og vedlikehold av maskiner i 5 forskjellige steinbrudd i Norge. for å prøve et annet merke, og så har vi vel hatt erfaring med Kobelco fra tidligere, at det har vært driftssikre maskiner med lite ståtid.
Pretty good, right? Pretty good. I have a funny feeling I know who shot that, but that's a whole other story. Let's have a look. Apparently, I'm not alone in doing pinch punch first of the month, no returns. Is it carrying a backpack? Yes, it is. I guess that was the power unit for the saw or whatever it was using up front there. Great tune for a Norwegian film, and Andy Thornton saying exactly the same thing. The film started like a Norwegian detective movie. I've been to Norway. It sounds like that in real life. Everywhere you go, that's playing in the background. Dan says that's an interesting looking attachment. Looks like a scene from 2001 Space Odyssey. Yes, absolutely. Waiting for the monkeys to start beating bones on the ground. Dan says one well-organized looking quarry. Totally agree. Gary says, wow, that's some size of a site. Very clean and tidy too. Shot by Kubrick. Could well be. I think it was shot by Ash from Awesome Earth movies. I've got no evidence to support that, but that's what his films look like. He's that good. Wow, a 350 for that equipment. I'd have thought it was a 60 or 80 ton machine. I don't listen. I'm sure they've spec'd it out very, very sensibly. But yeah, an unbelievable installation. We've got more. We started with Caterpillar hammers. We're going back to Caterpillar in just a moment to see how their rental stores are helping to power the data center revolution that is taking place in America, but taking place here as well. Back after this.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Mick Norton says the extraction of larvikite. I think that was what it was called. I think it was Larvik, the Larvik quarry. Not entirely sure. It looked kind of granity. Not entirely sure what exactly Larvik is. What do you call that attachment? I don't know. I'll re-watch it and see if I can figure it out. But let's crack on with something else. A couple of years ago, I think this is still going on. A couple of years ago, if you were driving up and down the M1, M40, M5, M6, all along the motorways, we were seeing the erection of warehouses for Amazon and out-of-town storage units and that kind of thing. That is still going on, but I think the next big revolution is going to be the erection of data centers, to power our questionable AI future. Well, Caterpillar is not sitting on its hands. It spotted the opportunity and it has jumped in feet first. And this is what it's doing to help fuel the data center revolution in America.
catrentals.com and the app, once the customer realizes this is a time saver to them, this is an ease of business tool. Everything is in one place where they can see it. They can make a request, they can get a simple answer, they can book a piece of equipment.
You can see when it was rented, when we plan to return it. I think it's very intuitive. It took me almost no time to figure it out. That's really crucial to getting things done.
Been working with Hensel Phelps for 3 years now. Weren't doing any business with them prior to this site and this project kicking on, so kind of got them on board from the ground up. It is a data center. It's a pretty large scale one of the biggest projects in the area.
Definitely one of our biggest customers. There's a lot of hands in there, a lot of things happening all at once.
Fast-paced, hectic. It's fun. Everything that you'd see on another site, it seems like it's just blown up times 1,000. It's such a cool thing to be out here and getting to see something so cool get built.
You have some buildings that are a little bit farther along than others, and we were able to have a rental yard out there. We have our equipment staged out there already, which is really nice and has been really helpful for Hensel Phelps to be able to just go and get what they need and get it right to where it needs to go.
The application that they use, that we in CAT offer, has been pretty pivotal for managing that business.
And anytime they have a new person on the job, because it's ever changing out there, we have always a new user, and they definitely use the calling off equipment and PO changes or service call for sure.
It's streamlining the paperwork. It can help reduce the phone calls when you're trying to call off equipment. We could get stuff same day, same hour.
The portal makes it easy to know when we got something, how much it costs us, where it's at, if we need it still, and then your staff does a great job of supporting that.
I'm just trying to make connections between their needs and the equipment that we offer and try to find solutions to build their projects. Meeting them wherever they need me to be, to do job walks, to go determine a specific piece of equipment for their specific application. A lot of variety of requests from, CAT gear to the non-CAT equipment.
Most of the stuff that I'm renting is monthly rental. We have it between 3 months to a year usually. I called this afternoon, or I put in a rental for a boom lift for 1 day, and it was approved. And he called me back and said, "Hey, come pick this up. We have it, and you're good to go." In a matter of half an hour or less. So
Since it's a big site, we have lots of light plants. I think at one point we had over 55 light plants on site. Just for our site logistics crew, we've used a couple different skid steers, a couple different front end loaders, forklifts, the 5K, 10K, 9K too. Our scrub brush for all of our roads on site to get all the dirt off.
we've had a great experience with the rental crew out here.
Building our communities for a better tomorrow, that's our purpose statement. I really get behind that. When you drive around and you look at all the projects that are going on, you look at the development, what it really hits home with me is when your kids start pointing out excavators and going, "Oh, that's where Daddy worked." All of that stuff is exciting, and I think to be a part of the team that helps support those projects in the community is fun.
Right, let's go back a stage. Let's go back to the Kobelco video that we showed you. Lavakite apparently is used worldwide for countertops, architectural cladding, monuments, and high-end paving. Thank you very much indeed. I mean, I'm guessing it is, it ends in "ite." I'm guessing it is some kind of granite. As I say, it looked granite-like, the way they were cutting it as well. Dan, enjoying that, says, looks a well-organized site. Jim Turner says, I'm going to look into these small shed container-sized data server centers at my place. I reckon with a heat exchanger, I could have a swimming pool heated for free and get paid for the ground rent too. Yes. I tell you what, I got to travel a lot. I still do a bit, but I used to travel a lot more. And there was a real surge, probably, blimey, 30 years ago, I would guess, in what they refer to as CHP, combined heat and power. Caterpillar were right at the very forefront of it. And I remember going to Norway, funnily enough. We've had a bit of Norwegian mentions on here, but I went to Norway, and there was a local tannery, where they take the hides off of animals and stuff. Well, they scrape all of the unpleasantness off it to end up with just the hide. And that, all the guts and skin and stuff like that was basically used to fuel a combined heat and power plant. Stored, methane comes off, and they would then use it to power a generator. What was interesting was they were using the generator basically for electricity. So it supplied electricity for the local municipality, for the hospital, for the school, for the local houses, and all of that kind of thing. But as Jim has rightly said, with the heat exchanger, basically, because it's such a massive engine, they had a heat exchanger, basically like a jacket, a cooling jacket on the engine. Well, it's more than one actually. It was 2 engines, huge cooling jackets that circulate water, and the water goes in cold, comes out roasting hot. Well, they were then pumping that water through pipes to basically radiators in the school, in the hospital, and into the people's houses. So not only were they getting electricity, they were getting warmth as well, which, sometimes in Norway is quite useful. That's what they were doing. And it really is it was one of those things I was sent to see. It was like combined heat and power. I know nothing about this. I came back thinking, well, that's the future right there. I've seen the future. Dirt Diggler, fantastic name over on Instagram, just joined us, as has Jamie Tarvui. Morning all, he says. Good morning to you, Jamie, as well. I'm almost out of excuses for not doing this video. I'm taking it with me to Italy. I'm going to sit down and get it done. It's been bedlam here, I promise. Gary says the USA are big in rental market, probably more than we are in this country. I wouldn't say so, actually. Their rental organizations are very, very big, and they cover a vast area, but there are still a lot of contractors in the States that like to own their own equipment. Whereas I think we've largely surrendered that. I mean, over here, what is it, 85% of all plant that's sold goes into plant hire. It's much, much less in America. But they do have some absolutely massive plant or rental companies over there. That's a plant porn wet addict's dream. Yes, it is. Gary says these data centers demand for all this power may push back even further the introduction of electric equipment into our industry. They'll have first demand for energy. May well have. That is one of the concerns, obviously. First demand for electricity, but also first demand for water to keep them cool. Water is a finite resource. Make of that what you will. Jim says, my cousin is a cat train fitter. He works on Caterpillar methane engines. Honestly, it is an absolutely fascinating subject. I can't remember the name of the actual town. I'm sure it will come to me at some point. But there's a place up in the northwest. It's kind of on the road between Manchester and Liverpool. No, can't think of the name of it. But they did exactly the same. I think theirs was off a landfill site, and they put a combined heat and power plant in there, and they were, as you say, creating electricity from effectively waste methane and generating electricity, generating heat as well. Really is. If you fancy learning something, go and have a look at that. Speaking of learning things, I didn't do this on purpose. That is basically the subject of today's morning monologue, how to keep learning. Imagine how that lava kite was extracted 100 years ago. Hand drilling, feather and wedge splitting, and hand winches. Yes. Don't get me started on hand winches, or we'll end up talking about the aliens building the pyramids or something. My son went down that rabbit hole not so long ago. Did make me laugh. Anyway, we're talking engcon in a moment after this.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
Yeah, Gary said exactly the same. We've also got Cat 777 engines running off the gas. Excuse me, bit of a tickle this morning. Off the gas from the landfill. Indeed. Lee Mansfield says it's Wigan, mate. No, there's a specific town that I'm pretty sure it begins with the letter E. I've got no way of checking because this is in my previous life, long before I started doing this. But it's not Wigan, but it's kind of up that way. But yeah, going back to Gary's point about engines running off landfill gas, it's kind of a quiet revolution. I know we do tend to talk about solar power and wind power and wave power and all that kind of thing, nuclear plants. There's quite a bit of that going on. There is quite a lot of that going on. Dan says, who knows any different possibilities? It was aliens built them. Bet it wasn't. Lee is insistent. What? I wish I could remember the name of the place. Maybe it will come to me. There's a few landfills doing this. Yeah, absolutely, there is. Listen, it's a potentially explosive gas. It's a waste. Why would you not? Yes, it will cost you a couple of $100,000 to get the plant set up, but after that, it's bunts, isn't it? Why would you not? Why would you not? Seems strange to be talking about somebody being a pioneer of engcon quick couplers and tilt rotators just 7 years ago, but in the States, that is very much the case. Me and Fred met this guy over in America while we were at ConExpo, and he was talking about his experience with engcon and how he is still, after 7 years, he's basically a veteran in the States, how he is still a big fan. Have a look.
My name is Tom Gardaki. I am co-owner of New Era Excavation out of Londonderry, New Hampshire, and I'm also the Dirt Ninja on social media. New Era Excavation is a small site work contractor. We do about 80% residential new home site work and 20% commercial construction. I would say what brought me to engcon was just talking to other people across the pond and seeing what they used. So I actually own the first one that engcon North America sold in the United States. It still runs every day, so it's pretty cool. It's 7 or 8 years old at this point. A lot of hours on it, still running great. Our business philosophy is that I will buy anything that will make our guys' lives easier or make us work more efficiently on a job site. We're a pretty small company. We have 8 employees, but we do the work of a company probably with 20 employees if they worked in a traditional fashion. The big advantages with the engcon come in on backfilling projects and grading projects. Just the way you can manipulate the bucket, spinning 365 degrees, tilting 45 degrees, and get that bucket in really a lot of positions. It saves a lot of handwork. Another really big thing about it is the EC oil system that runs in it, and it allows you to hook up the attachments without getting out of the machine, and no hoses to battle with, putting on and off. So you're always using the correct attachment for the correct job. The build quality is fantastic. I have had little to no issues with it. Their parts and service has been great. Their availability is fantastic. You should see the warehouse. There's a lot of inventory there if anybody wants to get anything quick. And then really the people behind it. They have some great people that work here that I've known for a long time, and they're good people.
So, I was saying about this combined heat and power plant up sort of St. Helens Roadway, and I said it began with an E. Yeah, it didn't. It was Billinge. There's a place called Billinge up on the St. Helens Road. That's where the combined heat and power plant was. Now, I reported on that 30 years ago. Whether it's still up and running, I have no idea at all, but it was doing that precise thing then. Dan says it takes 30 years to extract all gases from a landfill. Does this been on a few, their lifespan for extraction of gases? And it's something that doesn't go away. So long as there is stuff rotting in there. I'll come back to the thought of things rotting in just a moment, and landfills as well. Still find it strange that engcon hasn't decided to join Open S Alliance. Yeah, there's a couple of holdouts, isn't there? Chris Ford says, I've been producing gas for nearly 67 years. Well, strap a big engine to your rear end, sir, and you could heat your house for free. Speaking of this is something I had to research for a piece I wrote about 100 years ago. There's a landfill site on an island just off New York called Fresh Kills, as in fresh, kills, as in kill somebody. Fresh Kills landfill. And they had what was effectively an archaeological dig on the site. Well, I say dig, it wasn't so much a dig. They were doing like core samples. So they were driving an auger down and then extracting, a segment from down deep to find out what was being thrown away back in the day. And they came across a layer, quite a dense layer of meat, predominantly beef, steak, that kind of thing. And because the site had been so well compacted and coated and everything else, the steak, you wouldn't want to eat it because it had been there for a long while. But basically, the steak was intact; it was identifiable. And it turns out that there were fears of a steak shortage back in the 1920s, which didn't come to anything. But because the Americans, or because nobody had proper refrigeration back then, everybody got wind of the fact that there was going to be a run on beef and steak. So they went out and bought a load, couldn't keep it, so they had to throw it away. And it ended up in this Fresh Gills land site as a layer of largely intact beef. I found that fascinating. I don't get out much, but I found that absolutely fascinating. Commercial landfill gas recovery in the UK began in the late 1970s. Nowadays, dominant revenue source. Without it, many sites uneconomic. Indeed. Lee, listen, mate. You have to understand. I'm from down south, right? So my understanding of geography is London, Surrey, the north. And when I say the north, that includes Watford, Birmingham, and Wigan, and Scotland. It's just one big amorphous lump of land. So I apologise. That is by Wigan. I wasn't far off. Yes, you feel free to have a laugh at my expense. I don't know. It was a long while ago I was there. And frankly, I had to change my passport to get through the north-south divide. It's a long while ago. That's older than 28 days mature steak. Yes, I'm not sure I'd want to try it. I wonder if that steak would melt in your mouth. I think it would melt your mouth, actually. I think that's what... You ever seen these things where they dig up, I don't know, they'll find a new mummy. I'm sure they're not called mummies. I'm sure we've got a better name for that. But, they dig up a new, pharaoh from out. And there's a little bottle there and it's got some fluid in it, a wine from ancient Egypt. And somebody says, still drinkable. Are you mental? I mean, I don't like wine in the first place, but do you really, really want to drink 2,000-year-old wine? I understand how vintages work, but there's not a hope in hell. London, Surrey, and Norfolking idea. No, Norfolking idea. Yeah, that's about me. Let's have a look. I'm only having banter, mate. Lee, listen, that's the only reason any bugger turns up to this show, I promise you. Jim says, you'd think that much meat would have been better used to create maggots than let the chickens pick the maggots off, thus creating more meat or eggs. I wonder if the Americans back in the 20s even thought of that. Do you know, this will give you an insight to my upbringing very quickly. Me and my family, when I say my family, it was just me, my mum, and my dad. My sister hadn't even been born at that point. So we went off somewhere down the coast, Margate way. I don't know where we were, but it was kind of Margate way, I think. And my dad, as I've mentioned here a lot, very, very keen fisherman. Anyway, we were pootling around in the campsite one morning, just before breakfast. And my dad found a dead mole. I don't mean the one on your face. I mean, the diggy animals, a dead mole laying on the ground. And it had obviously been there for quite some time because there were maggots dining upon it. Now, most people would see that and think, ugh. My dad stood there, kind of knowingly rubbed his chin, went back to the caravan, not our caravan, somebody else's. So this is somebody else's Tupperware. He got a Tupperware box and a stick. He flipped the maggot or the mole into the Tupperware box, gave it a bit of a shake, and then flipped the mole back out again, and he had maggots. He then went back to the caravan and, using a stick and a bit of cotton and a safety pin, this is all true, he fashioned himself a fishing rig. We went fishing and he caught fish with the maggots from a dead mole. That's an absolute true story. I realise it makes me sound like I lived in Lord of the Flies or something, but this is absolutely true. Dead moles is Jasper Carrot's territory. Listen, if you haven't seen Jasper Carrot, I mean, I thought Jasper Carrot was very, very funny anyway, but he did a piece about going to Japan in the company of the guy that sang Shut Up in Your Face, Joe Dolce. And he talks about going to a restaurant, which is basically a couple of seats under a tarpaulin down an alley where there are rats running around. And the guy that's doing the cooking attempting to kill a chicken. Look at Chris, thank you. Wiki. It is honestly, to this day, it is one of the funniest things I've ever seen. That, and if you've ever seen or heard, I think it was only on record. I don't know. I've never seen it. I've only heard it. Bill Cosby, I realize Bill Cosby is persona non grata these days, but Bill Cosby did a piece back in the day, probably back in the 60s, called Chicken Heart. I listened to Chicken Heart on a plane once, and people were looking at me because I was laughing hysterically. So Wiki from Jasper Carrot, Chicken Heart from Bill Cosby. Trust me, it will improve your day. Let's have a look. Gary Muirhead says salt was used back in the day to protect your food and pickling stuff in jars. Yes, it was, which is precisely why. It's weird how these things come about. You go to places like Spain, Italy, as another example. A lot of their things like salami, they were stored and preserved and cured, and their meats and their the cold cuts and stuff, all preserved in salt, which gives it its unique flavour. You think about Spain. Anybody ever had bacalao? Basically salt cod, and we've caught cod. We've got too much. We can't eat it all. We'll wrap it in salt, and then we'll come back to it later. Very, very distinct flavour, but absolutely delicious. The Spaniards make some damn fine potato croquettes out of bacalao. I asked the vet what killed the mole. He said lack of mole ability. Oh, well done. Crystal says, like that, Mick, about my level. Yeah, about this show's level, actually, isn't it? Anyway, we're rapidly running out of time. We've got one more film to bring you, which is Life at Komatsu. Do it after this. Stand by your beds, people. We've just been joined over on Instagram by a company called Atomic Demolishers. What a fantastic name. I mean, I'm rather hoping they're not using nuclear devices for their demolition, but Atomic Demolishers over on Instagram. I'm going to look them up a bit later on. What do we got here in the chat? Time? What time, man? That made... Man that made time had made plenty of it. Well, indeed he did. I was struggling to read that for a minute there. Right, okay. Ever wondered to yourself, Komatsu, fine old company, makes some fantastic machines. Wonder what it's like to work there. Well, wonder no longer.
Building relationships and doing those kind of things where they know and they can trust you, Komatsu's really good about allowing that to happen. My name is Becky Dabbs. I am a content developer with the Komatsu Academy here at Komatsu. So my first role was actually as a contract employee, as training coordinator, which was really a rather large balloon of things, but that was luckily worked into a full-time position, hired with salary, about a year and a half later. I love the content development. That is really it. Getting the subject matter expert to give me their stuff and then turning it into digital learning has been a great adventure for me to learn. My managers have always been really great about allowing me to do other things than just my job. So they allow me to be at the customer events and do things that are just not in your everyday normal job. So that variety keeps me very engaged. I enjoy coming into work every day, mostly because of the people. I work with a really good group of people here in Cartersville. Everybody we're friendly, we're good with each other, we like to have a good time, we also joke, but we also know when we need to work, you got a team that's going to support you and be behind you and help you. So there's so many opportunities for anybody, whether it's a female, whether it's a male, whether it's somebody coming right out of college, somebody just coming right out of high school even. There's so many opportunities within Komatsu that I don't think people realize. It's not just about either putting the machine together or selling the machine. There's so many different job types within Komatsu now. You're going to work with a really great group of people that are going to learn, and you can learn from, and they'll teach you and help you develop into your next step. So I think it would be a great career move for anybody to come work for Komatsu.
Right, we'll stick with that first, because then we're going to go off at a complete tangent. Gary says, I was lucky enough to get to sit in the new PC220 LCI from Komatsu at Scott Plant. Really impressed with it. A lot of thought has been put into the design. I agree 100%. I said the other day, I reckon they are... I reckon that PC220 is probably peak excavator right about now. Listen, I'm here to be shot down, but I really do think that's the case. Are they the new clear leader in demolition? It's a close run thing. They would certainly be one of them, though. And now this wasn't Nelson's body brought back from Trafalgar, pickled in a barrel of rum or something like? Well, Chris, because that came through while your lady was there talking about Komatsu, I've had a chance to look. After Vice Admiral Horatio Nelson was killed at the Battle of Trafalgar on October the 21st, 1805, his body was preserved in a cask of French brandy, not rum, but French brandy, mixed, and this is the bit that got me, mixed with camphor and myrrh. I have never seen myrrh mentioned outside of the Nativity. You know, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Apparently, myrrh. I don't even know what myrrh looks like. Is it a liquid? Is it a solid? Is it a leaf? A seed? A rock? I don't know. But myrrh, yes. Nelson was preserved in a mixture of French brandy, camphor, and myrrh. Yes. Are they the nuclear leader in demolition? And Chris, Jim rather, he meant atomic demolition. Yeah, it makes you wonder, doesn't it? It makes you wonder. Have they said anything? No, they haven't come back to me. I can't even ask them the question. I saw this joke doing the rounds the other day. Yes, apparently Lord Nelson did actually get out of the barrel where he was swimming in the myrrh and the French brandy 3 times to have a piss. Yes, there's a good joke about that doing the rounds. Thank you very much indeed for that, Chris. Right, okay, we've got... I wouldn't say today's morning monologue is educational. It's more a call for the industry to be more educational. If that sounds like something that might float your bloat, if it might float your boat, please stick around, because that's about it for the main part of this morning's show. I'm going to remind you very, very, very quickly, no shows until Friday next week. But Monday is a bank holiday, so I won't be here. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I'm going to be in rainy Italy, according to the weather forecast. Slightly upset about that, but apparently that is the case. Terry's all gold, Frankenstein and Grr. You can't beat Edmondson and Mail in bottom. I have literally, yesterday, I finished Ade Edmondson's autobiography called Berserker. Really good. I mean, he comes across as an absolutely smashing fella. Unlike Ben Elton, I've read his book before that, who came across as a bit of a tit. Ade Edmondson came across really well. But do you know sometimes, I mean, obviously, you know, he's considered a proper actor now, but, you know, Ade Edmondson from The Young Ones, Bottom, Filthy Rich and Cat Flap, you know, very much a sort of a comic figure back in the day. And the book is a bit like that. It's it's by and large, it's quite funny. Some of it's very funny and stuff. But he also talks about his relationship with his father, which was at best strained. But his father ended up in a home with dementia. And the bit which is right near the end of the book, where Ade Edmondson is basically talking about watching his dad fade away and ultimately die, heart-wrenching. It really is. If you fancy, I listened to it as an audiobook. If I had it as a paperback, I'd offer to send it to you, because it is that good. But if you fancy that, please have a look. Ade is also a really good singer and guitarist. Yes, he is indeed. what were they called? I know he did the Bad News thing with with his mates from the Young Ones, but he was also in, I can't remember the name of the band, something Bastards. I've got the internet here. Ed Amundsen band. The Idiot Bastards. I should have remembered that because it's in the book. Yeah, the Idiot Bastards. And yes, he is. And you know, actually a man of many talents. It's quite surprising. And the circles that he moved in, you know, to come up through the comic strip and all of that kind of thing, you know, growing up basically. Well, he met his wife, Jennifer Saunders, while he was doing that, but surrounded by people like Ben Elton, Stephen Fry, Hugh Laurie. They're just absolutely fantastic. Bad News. Yeah, Bad News was that they did it as a bit of a spoof, but herein is how the world works. They did it as a spoof, and they predated Spinal Tap, funnily enough. So they had an imaginary fictional rock band that they went on tour. But that band ended up playing, you know, as they played Donington and Nebworth and that kind of thing. And they became, I wouldn't say they became popular, but because of who it was, they ended up sharing the stage. Bad News would go on, and the guest guitarist on one occasion was Brian May from Queen. On another occasion, it was Jeff Beck. Jeff Beck playing with Bad News. All of this is true. May have downloaded it as an audio book and listened to it on the way home. Honestly, that I would recommend the Ade Edmondson Berserker, and the other one, Nigel Planer, Young Once. Not Young Ones, Young Once. Absolute corker. Really is. Did the amps go up to 11? No, not with Bad News, but I still think that whole conversation, yeah, but these go up to 11. Like, that matters. It's just brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go and have a look at This Is Spinal Tap. It will make a whole lot more sense. As I say, won't be here next week, so make the most of this morning monologue because you won't get another one until this time next week. Back after this. When I was at school, a procession of increasingly frustrated teachers took turns trying to ram facts, figures, historical dates, and mathematical equations into the echoing void between my ears. Despite my resistance and indifference, they were at least partly successful. I never did master fractions, but I have a pretty good grasp of grammar and spelling that has afforded me, and continues to afford me, a living. I went through that same process at college, and even though most of it proved utterly useless in my adult life, many of the things I was taught remained filed away in the darkest recesses of my brain, you know, just in case. Pretty soon after, I went through journalist training. I learned a lot. In fact, I probably learned more during that period than at any other time of my life. And what I learned, I now use daily. I know much of what I write and say sounds like the ramblings of an angry old man, but I can assure you that underlying that anger is a proper journalistic foundation. But having been through school, college, and journalist training, my learning largely stopped, kind of. I'm an avid reader, and I've an innate curiosity coupled with a very short attention span. So as a result, I can be easily obsessed with a single subject, but for a very short time. It was sharks a few weeks back. It's the poetry of Walt Whitman today. Probably be something else in a few weeks' time. It was only when I embarked on my accidental career as a live streamer that I really tried to learn anything new, something that would move me forward and shift my career needle. And I see that mirrored in the demolition and construction industry. There's a mad scramble to attain the requisite qualifications to get a start on site. There's a more considered and focused learning as individuals select their chosen disciplines and their career paths. Somewhere along the line, there may be a refresher course or two to ensure you still remember the thing you do every single day. But in the main, your learning is done. Unless there's a sudden shift in direction, like me becoming a live streamer just a few weeks after learning what a live stream actually is. That's it. That initial training is all she wrote. It set you on a path, and you may never have to read a textbook ever again. Yeah, you might attend an industry conference, or you might sit in on one of the Institute of Demolition Engineers monthly seminars, but unless you're driven by an internal desire to learn continually, there's a very real possibility that your brain will merely need to tread water to remain precisely where it is. I was thinking about this yesterday when we were discussing the Dutch approach to the electrification of demolition and construction equipment. Now, I'm fortunate. I've been lucky enough to see this firsthand. I've been immensely impressed by how our Dutch cousins have embraced electrification and by how they've overcome obstacles and objections. But I'm also struck by how we in the UK are failing to follow their lead, failing to learn from their mistakes and their successes. We can fly to Amsterdam in a little over an hour. Christ, I could drive there in under 7. The Dutch are extremely accommodating, and there's no concern about language barriers. In my experience, most Dutch people speak better English than I do. So that knowledge is right there. It's on our doorstep. It could lead a UK business down a new and highly lucrative path if only we would reach out and grab the opportunity. 1 second, bit of an itchy eye. And this issue isn't isolated to the subject of electrification. During last year's European Demolition Association study tour of Italy, there were only 2 Brits on the whole trip, and I was one of them. Those who didn't attend missed the opportunity to go behind the scenes of Despe, one of the world's premier demolition companies. That was surely a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to learn from the very, very best. It was like Accrington Stanley being granted access to the Real Madrid coaching school. In addition to Despe, the trip took in several of the world's best attachment manufacturers. Another opportunity to see world-class equipment in the iron, to meet with the designers and the manufacturers. And above all, it was an opportunity to learn. And it was an opportunity squandered. If I want to know more about electrification, I'm looking to the Dutch and the Swedes. If I want to know more about regular attachments, I'm looking to the Italians. If I want to understand big attachments, I'm consulting the Japanese and the Americans. And all of that information is out there, and much of it is available free of charge. Failing to take advantage of that information is like owning a library card, but never actually visiting the library. Whether it's through laziness or arrogance, it's crazy and misguided to think that any of us knows it all. Whatever your field of endeavor or specific discipline, I guarantee there's someone out there right now doing it differently and quite possibly doing it better. Literally, as we speak, the future of our industry and the future of your job is being written in the Netherlands, in Italy, in America, or in Japan. But for us to learn what that future looks like, we need to be willing to pick up the book. There you are. That's my final thought for the day for this week and for a whole week. Hope you enjoyed it. Let's go over to the chat to see what's going on over there. Apparently, I have missed Mick's comment. Let me scroll back. There we are. Mick says Nelson's body was returned to the UK via Gibraltar. In the Gibraltar Museum, there's a mention of the surgeon removing his bowels to prevent decay and help good preservation. Now, if there, I don't know what you're called if you're from Gibraltar. Gibraltar? I don't know. I hope there's none of them listening, because I've been to Gibraltar twice, both times on a cruise ship. The first time I got off and had a bit of a mosey around, and I was that unimpressed by it. The second time I was there on a cruise, I didn't even get off the boat. So I was unaware of the fact that Nelson came back via Gibraltar, but thank you for sharing that, Mick, and apologies for missing your comment when it first came up. Dan says there is a big issue in the industry. Not many people are willing to learn new trades and stick to what they know. Yeah, and I do think there is an equal danger of that actually happening in the upper echelons of the industry. I think through, regardless of my personal feelings on competence cards and refresher courses and having to update and replace your cards on a regular basis, you are required to do that. If there is a new health and safety regulation, chances are your site supervisor will make you sit down and listen to a PowerPoint presentation or whatever it might be. If you go from operating a mini excavator to a 20-tonner, you'll be expected to sit a training course. If you then advance to go on to specific attachments, you may well be asked to do another course that goes with that, all of which is a part of the learning. As I say, I have my thoughts on the actual card and its relevance, but you are forced to do some learning. Once you've made it up to project manager, site supervisor, maybe middle management, or even director level, the onus to continue learning largely just goes away. Now, I mentioned, is it laziness? Is it arrogance? Is it a lack of time? If you're running a demolition company, a plant hire company, a construction company, do you have time to take yourself away and to upskill, to invest in yourself and go and learn something new for your company, but new for yourself? When was the last time you learned something new? As I say, I have a slightly weird brain in that respect. I kind of get fixated. I watched the bizarre way I came at this. Anyone familiar with the actor Ed Norton? Been in a bunch of films, and I really, really do think Ed Norton is a fantastic actor. He was on the Stephen Colbert show in the States a while back, and they got to talking about the poet Walt Whitman, and Ed Norton basically did like an 8-minute monologue based on Walt Whitman's poetry. So I bought a book of Walt Whitman's poetry, and it arrived yesterday. That's my thing now. That's going with me to Italy. I've got virtually no space in my bag, but I am going to be taking a book of poetry. Look at me, cultured. I'll be taking that with me because I have this temporary fixation. And I know full well, I'll read the book. I may well thoroughly enjoy the book, and then I'll discover something else. How many people in the upper echelons of our industry do that? And I did mention the fact that the Institute of Demolition Engineers do host a monthly seminar where they do some kind of educational content, and they're very good. All I would say is the last one, I think, was by Able UK, and they were talking about the demolition of offshore oil rigs, which if anyone was taking part, I'm sure you had a fine old time. And the content was very good, very well considered and everything else. But of all of the demolition companies in the UK, and there's about 550 odd of them, there's probably 2 or 3 that will ever actually do that. So while I'm sure everybody found it fascinating, the scale and the danger and the complexity, I'm sure they found it fascinating. It's not the kind of learning that most people in the industry will ever be able to apply. How much are we learning that we might actually be able to apply? And I honestly don't think this needs to be book learning. I remember speaking to, can't remember the guy's name. One of the designers, he subsequently left, but one of the real sort of pioneers over at Bobcat, and he was talking about, he was obviously looking at construction equipment, but he was also looking at what was happening with like the pharmaceutical industry, the automotive industry, in crypto, and all of it was, well, could we use crypto to do online rentals of equipment, and what is the automotive industry doing in terms of like heads-up displays? Well, we could do that better, and so on down the line. How much of this industry, particularly those in roles of responsibility, how many of those are looking not just at, I do demolition today, I'll do demolition tomorrow, I'll do demolition the day after? How many are going, let's take a step back. What are they doing over in that sector? What are they doing in waste, in mining, in quarrying? I mentioned the notion of learning from the Dutch on electrification. We could quite easily learn from those in mining because they've been doing it for a while. Autonomous equipment. Yes, you could travel to Australia, you could travel to South Africa, you could consult with Caterpillar right here, right now, and talk to them about automation and autonomy as it might be applied to construction, demolition, whatever it might be. How many people are doing that? Has anyone on the show ever been to a class reunion and find out what road they went down, how they're turning out totally different from the way you thought? Yes, I did do that. Many lessons to be learned from school reunions. It was quite weird, but one of the girls I went to school with hosted our first school reunion. We were the class of 77, and we went back to our actual school, which isn't even a school anymore, but she hired the school hall, and we all went back, and I think there was like 120, 130 people there. And when I arrived, I walked through the door, and there was just this huge mass of people all shouting over each other and everything else. After about half an hour, everyone had gone back into their little groups, exactly as we'd walked out of school all those years ago. That was one thing. One of the other things that I found really interesting, and I'm sure I've mentioned this, I had a mate at school, Steve. He was by far the smartest guy in our year. He was proper brains of Britain. English, brilliant. Maths, brilliant. Science, brilliant. He was good at everything, really was. He left school and became a delivery driver for Parcel Force. And I said to him after the school reunion, we were stood around having a beer. I said to him, you were the brains of Britain, and you're delivering for Parcel Force? And he said, yeah. He said, married my childhood sweetheart, bought my house. It was bought and paid for by the time I was about 45. He said, I have 2 holidays a year, both of which are to Jamaica. I'm home from work by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so I've been to all of my children's sports days and open evenings and everything else. And I remember thinking, he's actually smarter than I ever really believed. So yes, there you are. Gary, no, never. Some guys, people I know back in the day, fell off on the wayside, never came to anything. Unfortunately, rather go to the pub. Yeah, well, we had a few of those as well. Like plant operators only want to stay on housing sites, not venturing onto quarries, landfill, or demo. Yeah, there's so much. And listen, bear in mind the nomadic nature of this industry. You might go and spend a week in a quarry and think this is the worst job in the entire world. You might go and spend a week in a quarry and think, I have come home. This is where I belong. This is precisely the kind of operation I want to work in. Jim says, I try to read up on as much stuff as possible. Knowledge is power, and education is a lesson that lasts a lifetime. Yeah, that's why. Listen, this isn't for show, and this is a fraction. That's why there's a bunch of books behind me. It's not. I'm doing a live stream. I must look intelligent. Frankly, my face and my accent tells another story. But yes, you will find me. If I'm driving, there's an audio book playing. If I'm sat still, there's a book in my hand. That's the way I tend to roll. Been asked what was my most interesting project, and said all the projects I've been on were interesting in different ways. Yeah, and I do think the actual hands-on, I do think that you do tend to take things away, and not even deliberately. And I know I do when I'm like now when I'm talking about stuff that I've seen, stuff that I've visited and stuff. You see a thing, it doesn't really apply to what you're doing right now. It might be something somebody says or something you saw, but your brain kind of tucks it away in the back there. And then one day, 2 weeks, 2 years, 20 years later, you go, oh, do you remember when I saw that thing? It really is a lesson for a lifetime. Dan says, I love using attachments. Demolition is the right place for that. School infuriated me as they talked too slowly and expected me to write it all down. I had a great time at school. The one thing that I deeply regret, and part of this was the education system, and part of this was my vaguely rebellious nature. The notion of being force-fed books, but being basically tortured with a thing that is designed to give pleasure is the worst thing. I was force-fed Dickens, I was force-fed Shakespeare, and so many others, and it put me off forever. That's not strictly true. It didn't put me off forever, but I have probably I left school in 1981. It took me a good 25 years before I thought, let's give Shakespeare a go. And I'm glad I did. But to have been force-fed, so as I say, something that's supposed to give you pleasure, just counterintuitive. It really is. Quarries, I like the organisation of plant movements and plant. Yeah, absolutely. Looking at trying to get SMSTS, but I can't find time to get on the training as I'm a person on the ground and not for in-class learning as I lose concentration. Yeah, I can see that. I don't think you're unique in that. I say this to many operators, get out into different fields. You never know. You know, you might, like I say, you might pop over, do a stint in a quarry. And you know, maybe you're a dyed-in-the-wall demolition person, but there might be something over in the quarry field that you think, actually, that would really work well in demolition. I don't know what that might be, but it all feeds into itself. Dan says, I've been asked, what jobs can you do with an excavator? I said, here, ring these guys. They'll tell you what I can do. They come back and say, there's nothing for you. There's nothing you can't do. Yeah, and again, I mean, I think also keeping it fresh. I'm not entirely convinced that refresher courses necessarily do that. I think that's more a case of having to jump through a regulatory hoop. I've got a card. Well, you need to refresh it. No, okay. But I do think if you then go and apply your skills, you know, if you're in demolition, going to quarrying, if you're in quarrying, going to groundworking, if you're in groundworking, going to house building, whatever it might be, you know, applying your skills elsewhere, because you will always take something away from all of that. Chris Ford says, I still meet up once a year with someone I went to school with from when we were 5 years old. My wife is incredibly fortunate. She has 5 school friends. She went to primary school with a couple of them, and she went to high school with the other 3. She still sees them monthly, literally every single month. They are all 60 years old next year, and they're all going off on a cruise together. You know, they have retained that friendship, and I'm very, very envious, because I didn't. Jim says, I'd love to work in a quarry, but I'm not taking a pay cut. Fair enough. Gary says, have to go now, guys. Have a fantastic weekend with your family, people. You too, Gary. Give Christine a big hug for me. Go and get her a big pina colada or something like that, and I'll see you again on Friday, because that's when I'll be back. I can't stick to one thing, i.e. quarries. I have to keep my brain active by traveling to new jobs across the country and meeting interesting people. Look at Nigel Williams. I mean, I think Nigel's doing exactly the same thing. You know, he's on a different site, sometimes every other day. Imagine how much you're sucking in, you know, the people you're meeting, the conversations you're having, the machines you're operating. Must be fantastic. Really keep your brain fresh. I've never attended a school reunion, mainly due to the likelihood of some bastard reminding me of the time in 1954 when I was forced to join the school Morris dancers as a punishment. Oh, yeah, Morris dancers. Although I will say this, I moved out from London when I was 9. You know, went to a pretty rough and ready school in South London. I mean, if I tell you, at 9 years old, one of my fellow pupils took a screwdriver to school once to stab me. 9 years old. So yeah, it was a classy outfit, I promise you. But we moved from there out to Surrey, and in my first term at a school in Surrey, I danced around a maypole. Yeah, that's a thing. Thankfully, nobody had a video camera at the time, but I did do that. Jim, I can't stick a classroom or being in an office all day. I'm a mission learner. Listen while I'm physically involved in it. That, again, that's why I'm a huge fan of audiobooks. You know, the fact that I can drive from here to Birmingham and consume 2.5, sometimes 3 hours of book. You know, it might be light-hearted like the Aid Edmondson one. It might be something a lot more deep and meaningful. But the fact that I can do that on the move, love it. That's exactly what I do, Mark. Why I move around a lot. Yeah. Have a good one, Gary, says Dan. And he also says, have an amazing weekend, guys. Stay safe, be happy, give your loved ones a hug. I intend to do all of those things. I'll see you again on Friday, this time next week. Well, 10 o'clock next week on a Friday. I shall return with tales of pizza and pasta and salami and pretty poor Italian weather by the sound of things, but I will also be hanging out with the likes of Komatsu and Kobelco and MB Crusher and a whole host of others as well. So tune in if you possibly can. Dan says I might buy one of those books. As I say, if I had them as books, Dan, I would send them to you, but I have them as an audio file, and it's in Audible. I can't even forward you the audio file. It's all locked down. But I honestly, personally, I thoroughly enjoyed the Aid Edmondson, but I would recommend the Nigel Planer one, Young Once. It really is an absolute corker. Keep us updated on your trip and safe journey. Thank you very much indeed, Dan. I will do that. until next Friday, have a good weekend. Have a good long weekend. If you are getting to enjoy the bank holiday, please do so. Try and put your feet up. Grab a good book. Have a bit of a nose through that. And I'll see you on Friday. Take care all.